you can be a leader. You have what it takes to be able to step up and lead your own life and lead others if that is something that is required or desired by you.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, welcome. Here we are again together for an exciting new episode. And today we're talking about leadership. Now, leadership is a word that I would say you could interpret in about 1,000 different ways. We could be talking about leadership in a job, leadership in a business, leadership in a family, leadership on a committee, just being the type of person who comes across in a powerful way. We can interpret it 1,000 ways. So we are going to talk about that today. And we're also going to add in talking about the Gallup Strengths Finder. And you may know from the episodes I've done on human design that I love all types of ways of explaining ourselves to each other. So this will be an interesting one as well. My guest today, Brianne Suffren, is a wife, a mom of two, and a full-time traveling nomad. Gosh, we maybe should have done an episode about that. She is a leadership and business coach, and she is the founder of the Leadership HQ. She has been leading and mentoring people for 27 years. And she says she's made every mistake you can think of. And if she can do it, then her clients can do it too. So it hasn't been an easy journey, but despite all the challenges, she has created multi-million dollars in sales and teaches her team to do the same thing, and realized that as she was teaching her team to lead, she couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. And that's when the Leadership HQ was born, to empower driven professionals to thrive as leaders. So welcome, Brianne.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion for sure.
Oh, I am sure we will. I am so excited, Cheryl. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so let's dive right in. Everyone heard in the introduction, you've created multiple businesses. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur and coach others, or how did that happen? Tell us your story just a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't. I was kind of lost, went to high school, did some college, didn't finish college. I just knew that I loved to work. And it was interesting. I got my first job as I don't know what you call it, a cashier at McDonald's at 16. And then I became a manager at 18. And every job I had kind of since then, they put me in this managerial role. And I would joke and say it's because I'm willing to work harder than everybody else. And they probably didn't have to pay me as much because I do like two different people's jobs, right, for the price of one. It's funny. I was working in corporate America. I was an operations manager for GE, and an opportunity presented itself for me to make my own money. I had never even thought about it. My dad was an entrepreneur for part of my childhood, but I realized it just struck something in me, and I quit working for the insurance company when I was 27 and
Wow.
never looked back.
It's amazing. And I always find that the most interesting conversations on this podcast are people who have kind of had something happen to them in their lives that made them go, wait a minute, like I need to provide this service, or I need to help other people, or, they've just gone through something. So I think that's true of you as well. And I remember now that we talked previously about the fact that you and I both would take a job and somehow end up doing the leadership part of the job. I was running the cashiers at Harris Teeter when I was in high school at the whole front end. And so it's funny. We'll talk about, what does that come from? How does that happen? So let's kind of jump off from there. We're talking about leadership. And you're saying even at 18, you ended up in a leadership role. So, what do we mean? What does leadership even mean? What do we mean when we say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can mean multiple different things. It's a multifaceted, topic, right? And so to me, leadership is about inspiring, it's about influencing. It's about having a group of people or a person see your direction and where you want to go, right? And you're kind of enlisting them to have this common goal with you, and you're sharing your vision, and you're taking them with you. That's really what leadership is to me.
I love that definition. And that means it doesn't require any particular title, right? You can be a leader in whatever role you're playing in whatever group you're playing it in.
Absolutely.
So, what are you often helping some of your clients with in terms of leadership? What's like a common struggle that you're often helping people through when we're talking about leadership?
Whew, that's a loaded question, Cheryl. You know, you do see conflict quite a bit, and managing conflict is a topic that comes up a lot. And it's from misunderstandings to there being a power struggle a little bit, depending on the role. I do mentor a lot of different types of entrepreneurs. Right now, I'm doing a program that is about to end, and it is with primarily network marketers. So those people in the network marketing industry, for example, which you see a lot of, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry today, for women and men. And what I see a lot of is there's a power struggle between the leader or the person that brought that person in and the person that now is there trying to lead their own business, lead their own team. And then
Mm,
it becomes, well, who's the leader of this person? Is it me who brought the person into the business, or is it the leader that brought me in? Right. And there's that.
yeah.
And then it's this volunteer army style. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that term, but it's what we,
Yes.
use as a phrase when, they're not being paid as staff to work for somebody, right? So if I'm in a business and it's an entrepreneurial business, and, somebody comes in and joins my team, they have to be willing to show up. They have to be willing to do the hard thing. And so what I've found is when there is some leadership challenges there that start to become presented, people quit. And I believe it's because people get uncomfortable and they don't know how to handle themselves, and they don't want conflict. And so then people's businesses don't grow, and that's money that they were planning on making for their family that now they don't have, right? So it can be,
Right.
that's a big one.
Yeah. And it's making me, when you say volunteer, it's making me also think about a different aspect of that, which could be volunteering on some sort of charitable committee or school committee or something like that, where there could be power struggles and who's in charge. Nobody's being paid. So why do I have to listen to her or him? Same thing. I can see that the conflict would be a big issue potentially and how to handle that.
Absolutely. And especially in places like that when nobody's being paid, because in their mind, they're saying, I'm here to show up and I don't have to show up. I'm not being forced to show up. So if this isn't going to go my way, and this is going to be too much for me, or this is going to be a challenge for me, and I'm not going to get along with A, B, or C, is it even worth it for me? When I find, that a lot of it has to do with a change in not just that they disagree, but in tone of voice. Do you know that there's some statistical facts around that when there's conflict or disagreement, 90% of it is the tone of voice, a wrong tone was used, and 10% of it is that it was actually a disagreement in the topic. Can you believe that?
Wow. Wow.
10%.
I know how powerful body language and tone of voice and all of that is, but that's a pretty shocking number, I would say. You're saying that if I'm speaking with kind of an argumentative tone or sounding upset, even if I'm saying something that isn't necessarily about conflict, it still could be taken that way. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, that, and because a lot of messages are done without voice,
Mm,
text is a big one. Not so much in 2024 email, 10, 15 years ago, every email, email, email. Now a lot of it's text. So even the nonverbal cues. So tone of voice or lack thereof, right? Like,
Right.
so the text message comes through, it seems abrasive because there was no voice to indicate that tone and make sure that they didn't sound abrasive. It came off abrasive. So yes, 90% tone of voice or lack thereof, and 10% actually being that they have a disagreement in the problem, which blew my mind because when you think about the amount of conflict that happens in the workplace or just between individuals, you would think that it's because they truly do have a disagreement most of the time.
Yeah, I would think. Yes. So conflict is a big one. And another question, we're going to talk about the Strengths Finder, and I think this is going to pull all of this together. But another question occurred to me. Do you find that people struggle with leadership sometimes because they don't feel personally ready to lead or like a leader, or it's, kind of a self-image thing as well? Do you see that very often?
I do. I do. People are scared. They're afraid to let others down. They're afraid to let themselves down. And I think a big one is people are afraid to be vulnerable in the leadership space. You
Mm,
know, it's hard sometimes to let your guard down. People worry about making decisions, making the wrong decisions. They worry that they're going to be rejected. Somebody isn't going to agree with something that they say. And I find it to be a big thing. People are so scared that they hold themselves back. And so, one of the biggest things that I teach is helping people to be a dynamic leader. If people can get really confident about their own abilities, their own leadership skills, and they can feel confident in leading others, then that business can grow. And then once they get to that level, then what I teach them is duplication. I teach them
mhm,
ultimately how to duplicate themselves, because when they can
mhm.
duplicate themselves and they can teach their leaders not just to be able to lead, but to be able to be high performing leaders. I feel like there's a difference.
Yeah.
And when they can do that and they become high performing leaders, then what starts to happen is they have people that can take over pieces of their business. And this works for people that have brick and mortars. This works
Yes.
for network marketing. This works for solopreneurs that maybe just have one assistant or something like that. They can start to offload some of their work and they can really behave more like an owner of the business versus an operator of the business, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. So part of leadership is then being willing to delegate and hand off some of these things to other people and empower them to do it as well.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. If a leader is the best and they can do everything the best way and no one can do anything as good as they can, then they're really not leading, right?
Mm. So we should say that leadership is it's both about leading people, wanting them to follow us, setting a good example, but also empowering people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go a little bit further then into what a leader would want to have as their strengths. And this is where the Gallup Strengths Finder comes in. And as I said in the intro, I always love these types of things. And I remember what two of my main strengths are. Tell us more about what the Strengths Finder is before we really get into it.
Yeah, so the Gallup Strength Finder is an assessment and it's a tool. It's a psychological tool. And basically, what it does is it's designed to help an individual identify their natural talents. So, like the talents that they're born with and what their strengths are, and also what their preferences are. So, this test is designed to be able to show also what's most important to them and what they care about the most. And I know a lot of companies that use this in hiring. A lot of organizations use this in just helping people to become their very best. Entrepreneurs use it. I even have a friend that owns a gym that has her managers take the Gallup Strength Finders test. So I thought that was really interesting. And the point of it is, and why these matter, right, is not only for us to know ourselves and who we are, But the better that we know our strengths, we're focused on those things and we're not so much focused on the weaknesses because, people do that, right? They focus on what they're not good at. And so this is really about exemplifying those strengths, and helping people use those strengths to maximize their potential.
Maybe you are growing a business and using social media. Maybe you have kids or committees who need a basic website for sports or for something at their school. For me, it's having a link in bio for this podcast that is easy for me to update, looks fantastic, and easy for you to find what you are looking for. I use Boss Lady Bio, and you can absolutely create a website that looks fantastic and you do not have to know how to code. Have a look at what Boss Lady Bio offers at omgteachme.com/recommendations. You can even try it for free. And if I'm remembering correctly, all of these characteristics that people might have kind of also have sort of a good point and a not so good point. I forget the terminology that could be true about those characteristics. Is that right?
Absolutely. Like just because that's a strength, it also can be not necessarily a weakness, but you have to treat it in the way it's kind of like the healthy and unhealthy of the Enneagram. If you've ever done the Enneagram or any of
Yes.
your listeners have, it's the same concept. There's a healthy and an unhealthy, right? So I'll give you an example. Communication is my number one strength, but it's also incredibly important to me. Anyone that has worked with me knows that I am very tight on communication. I don't ever want to send anything out late. If I'm running an event next week and I've got the agenda done and I've communicated and I've done all of that. But here's where it has been a fault for me. Because communication is so important to me, there were seasons in my career where it took me far too long to explain things to people. I
Mm.
always said, well, I want to make sure that I don't offend anybody. So when I would have leader meetings, I would have 10 of my top leaders sitting right in front of me, and I would take longer because I would say, well, I don't want to offend this one, this one, this one, this one. Well, that's good, right? But you also want to learn to be concise in a meeting. So there's one
Yes.
side of it in saying, I don't want to offend anybody. I want to think about everyone's personalities in the room, and I want to make sure that I deliver this information appropriately. But I also don't want to do it in twice as much time because communicating is so important to me that I have to make sure that everyone hears it the way that I think it should be heard?
Right.
Yeah, that can be a drawback.
Yeah, so it's so important to understand. And I remember that one of my strengths in the Strength Finder is empathy. And I remember this kind of pro and con thing, although that's not really what it's called as well, because I mean, the word empathy, we know that could be a good thing, right? Like I can really read people most of the time. Nobody's perfect. I can feel what people are feeling. I can communicate with them more easily because of that. However, I can take on the negative stuff from people way too easily and allow it to affect me and hold me back and all kinds of bad stuff too. So similar thing. I recognize that, and that's actually one of the reasons I left teaching, because I realized taking on the angst of a room full of 30 teenagers all day was wearing me out. But every talent or every aspect of our personality, it can have a pro and a con, I guess, for sure.
Absolutely. And I have some friends that have empathy in their top five. And it's funny, one of my friends, my closest friend that I know that has empathy in her top five, you're going to laugh. She was a teacher. She also left teaching. So isn't that crazy? But you're right. Taking that on is such an immense weight to bear,
Yeah.
especially for someone that's so empathetic.
Yeah, it was very enlightening for me to learn that, because another one of mine is analytical, and I was a math teacher, so that made sense. I have an analytical brain, but just to put it's such a fascinating combination to put all these different talents or strengths together. And I guess that's what makes us all individual. There we are. So we are talking about leadership. Are there some, let's say that someone is taking the Strength Finder at their work or has decided to take it on their own and find out more about themselves. Are there some strengths that are things that we really want to get better at or cultivate if we are focused on leadership?
Yes, I mean, if you take the strength finders aside and you think about things that are not in there, like the ability to manage conflict, you know, integrity, having vision, those things are incredibly important, I find, with a leader. What I would
Yeah.
say personally is communication is really, really crucial. If you read different books on leadership, a lot of people, when they think about leadership, they think about John Maxwell. He has written many, many leadership books. And
Yes.
one of the things he talks about is communication. There's a book that he has, and it's 21 irrefutable laws of communication. That might not be the exact book, but if someone was to search that, you'd know what I was talking about. And it's all on communication, 21 laws of communication, because
Wow.
it's that crucial. And we just talked about, the 90% versus the 10%, right? When with managing conflict because of misunderstanding. So if communication is not clear, we can see that not only can we have conflict, but people can be put in situations where they're feeling poorly about themselves. You can tear someone down as a leader. And I think it's just a really important piece. As a leader, I will tell you, I've had people say to me through the years, as someone who's mentored many, especially a lot of women, I don't think I can be a leader because I don't have these strengths.
Mm.
And so I can tell you that I think there are certain specifics, but what I will say is that if you were to look specifically at the Gallup Strength Finders, that test specifically, anyone can be a leader no matter what their strengths are, in my opinion. No matter what that test shows you, you can be a leader if you decide to be a leader. What I would say is if certain areas are low, let me give you an example. Communication's very high for me, and so is strategy.
Mm.
Those are two key pieces as far as being a leader. Okay. There's something like 36 strengths. Discipline is 33 for me. 32. It's some number it's so low.
Down in the
And when
bottom.
people oh, listen, Cheryl, when people have seen this, they're like, no way, that can't be. You are one of the hardest working. You are so motivated. You are not lazy. There's no way. Discipline, it's got to be your number one. This test is wrong. No, it's not wrong. My discipline is actually really low. Now, do I need to have incredible discipline to be a great leader? No. But if you want to make money as an entrepreneur and you're going to have your own business, discipline is pretty important. But I'm an
Yes.
activator. Activator is my number sixth. So the activator pulls the other one up. So I share this to say some people look at theirs and they think, oh, this is low, that's high. I can't be good at this. Does it mean that because my discipline is a 33, I can run around saying, well, Susie, I just, my discipline is a 33, so I'm just not good at that. I can't seem to get up on time in the morning because I'm not good at that. I'm not going to be able to do this because I'm not disciplined, right? I don't get to use that as a crutch. I don't get to use that as an excuse. So I truly think people can be incredible leaders no matter what the test says. What I will say is communication strategy, like I mentioned, is really important. There's one on there, includer, and the includer is the natural gatherer. And they're really, really good at gathering people. And people that are good includers have natural influence.
Yeah.
And then visionary is another one. That one is a bit lower for me as well. But I've been told, and I kind of know this about myself, I'm not good at a lot of things, but I am good at a few key things. And one of them is creating culture. Well, to create a strong culture, you have to have a vision. So how can I create strong cultures and how can I be good at that when my vision is low? Because the other pieces in the strength finders pull that vision up. Does that make sense? My
Yes.
significance is very high. My relator is very high. So I can relate to others. That's number 4 for me. Even though then the other one is low, my vision is low, but I also can relate to people. So see, that pulls the visionary up. So a lot of them are intertwined in there. So when people see these, if you listen to this podcast and you run out and you take the test, don't be disappointed with any of it because it's really very particular to each person. And that's why the test itself has sections where it doesn't just give you what number everything is, there's an explanation behind it.
Yes.
So it's not like, Cheryl, if you and I, let's say both of our empathy was in the exact same spot, that wouldn't mean it would read the same. It wouldn't be the same
Ah,
paragraph because your empathy is based on all your other strengths and what order it's in. And my empathy is based on all of my other strengths and what order it's in. So I do just want to say that because I think that there's a lot of people that can look at it and say, oh, you know, some of these really strong skills I don't have in the top. And so it could not be further from the truth.
I'm so glad that the conversation is going in this direction because I feel like we're sort of headed into mindset coaching territory, which is great. I love mindset coaching territory. And so, even though I love all of these measures to understand myself better and to understand people better, what you're really saying, and the way I'm interpreting it, is no matter what the words are, we can use the information to be the best version of ourselves and, do with that whatever we want to do with that. It's not as if one outcome is you're never going to amount to anything and the other outcome is you're amazing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, leaders thrive best when they're working on something they're passionate about. I have seen great leaders
Mm.
struggle when all of a sudden something happens. Maybe they're not aligned with their company. Maybe there's a change that's made, whatever it is, an organizational change. Maybe they change jobs, thought it was going to be one thing, it's something else. I've seen people that have been phenomenal leaders change drastically and become self centered and all the things. I think it truly matters that you're working on something that you're truly passionate about and you can be a leader. You have what it takes to be able to step up and lead your own life and lead others if that is something that is required or desired by you to hit your next income level, Maybe people are working corporate America and they want to apply for the management position, but they think that because they haven't been there long enough, none of those rules are on the table anymore,
Yeah, true.
you know?
And I'm not going to be able to quote my source here, but I know that I have read somewhere recently that women in particular are so much less likely to stick our necks out and apply for that next role, exactly what you were just saying. And maybe we talk ourselves out of it because we think maybe we don't have exactly the right qualifications, everything to the letter or whatever. I think that's a challenge, particularly for women sometimes.
Absolutely 100%. Men are still paid more than women in America. And it's not every man is paid more than every woman, right? But if you look at the population, generally men are paid higher than women. And there are situations even today where men and women both will apply for a job and very similar resumes, and men will get a stronger salary. And I don't know if it's, I don't want to make comments and say that it's,
Right. Who knows? Yeah.
sexist type thing, but it's not. It simply is that it still is that way. And I think also we know men are just simply more dominant personalities typically, especially in the business world, typically. So, yeah, and it's changed drastically from what it was like 50 years ago.
Sure has. Yes. Yes.
It's still, I can see why women are struggling in that era. And I think that a lot of times we don't like conflict.
Yeah, and to lead a team or a group or employees or whatever we're going to call it, whatever the situation is, there's always going to be some conflict. So, you're talking about dealing with conflict, communication, empowering people, inspiring people. It's not really a man versus woman thing, but we have to believe we can do it, and the self-confidence maybe is what sometimes, again, typically, right? Not everyone, maybe men find easier than women sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, I've worked with women for a long time. I mean, for the last 19 years, I've primarily worked with women. And I think what you can see too is women, a lot of us are mothers, and we have that mothering role and that motherly role. When I had children, I definitely changed. I was an operations manager at GE at 27, and I had my first child at 34. And I can tell you right now, I think that even now, being so long ago, thinking back to how I behaved then, and I'm like, why am I such a baby? Why can't I say this to that person? Why am I holding back what I know is the truth? I will tell you something. At 27 years old, I was a boss. And now I'm like, I don't know. I have a 6-year-old. I definitely softened up as a woman when I became a mom, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that might, I don't have any proof on this, but I think that might play into it. And I always want to just remind women, you are strong, you are powerful. And I also think too, conflict is not a bad thing. We see people struggle with conflict because, they look at it as a terrible thing. It can be very healthy as long as it's done right, right? Just like they
Hmm.
say in marriage, conflict is okay. If one partner is never saying anything, never arguing, never disagreeing with the other, they're probably keeping some stuff inside and it's probably unhealthy. When organizations and teams have conflict, it's because the members of the team feel comfortable enough to give their opinion to the leader. And
Ooh, good
hopefully it's
point.
not a battle type of situation, right? But the best leaders are the ones that give their people an open hand and allow them to be truthful, allow them to make decisions, allow them to take part. The leader is asking their team what they think, and they're okay with not being agreed upon, right? Because
Right.
when the team gets better, when people can give support and give their opinion, if everything is always what the leader thinks and always how the leader feels, then the team is only going to ever go so far. So I think if people can really grasp that concept around conflict, they won't be so likely to shy away from it.
Yeah, that's a bit of a mic drop there. I'm kind of replaying it in my head. We want we want to hear from the people we're leading, because if we're not hearing from them, then something's going on that's not out in the open, basically.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So that that gives us a lot to think about. Let me ask you, if somebody does want to find the Strength Finder and do it for themselves, can they easily just Google it and find it, or how does that work?
Yep, they can Google it and find it. You can just go right on Google Gallup Strength Finders. It'll come up right away. It's going to come up gallup.com, or it might come up Clifton Strengths, but you're going to see it right away. The other thing that I will tell everybody is this: you can go onto Amazon and you can buy the Gallup Strength Finders book. The last I saw, it was maybe $15, maybe $20, but I don't even believe it's near $20. When you open the inside, there is a code on the inside that gives you the ability to take the test for free when you get the book.
Wow.
And then the book explains every single strength in detail. It is such a good investment. So if you're thinking about taking it, definitely grab that.
Wow. Okay. I will have a link for that on the website and in the show notes for sure, because that's a great tip. I think I'm going to do it too. I'm going to do that myself because I love these. Okay. Then also, let's say that people are liking some of the things that you're talking about with leadership, or maybe they're looking for someone to help with leadership. How can people find you and connect with you?
So I am on Instagram at the Leadership HQ, and that is the best place to find me. So absolutely DM me any questions, any comments, any thoughts. I would love to hear from you.
Perfect. And so we have to end with the most important question. Not the most important question, but the question I ask everyone. And that is the song that would be your favorite to put yourself in a good mood or raise your vibration, help you feel happy, because we're going to add it to the Mood Lift playlist on Spotify. So tell us what your song would be.
I love this. So, this is a really hard one. This is a great question, and this was really difficult. My song that I chose is Champion by Carrie Underwood.
So I actually don't know which one that is. I love Carrie Underwood, but I will go and check it out right after we are finished recording this because I'm sure I'll love it. Yeah, she does a lot of very empowering, nice beat type of songs.
She does. This is not a country song, really. It's more of a pop type song. But if you go to the YouTube and watch the YouTube video of it, it's amazing. It's a great song.
Awesome. Okay, well, something to look forward to. So, Brianne, thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I just loved chatting with you today. And thanks again.
I really was fascinated by some of the things that came up in that conversation with Brianne. So I will put the book links in the show notes, and you can also find them on omgteachme.com/read. That's the Gallup Strength Finders book, and 16 Laws of Communication and 21 Laws of Leadership from John Maxwell. Both are fantastic. And I'll tell you another one of my favorite leadership books is called The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma. And that one's a fascinating book as well. So have a look, grab one of those, read up. And there were a couple of things that really came out in this discussion that I want you to remember. Number one, we communicate a lot with our tone. And so do be careful to think about how your written words come across, because we write a lot. She's right. We text, we write a lot, and you don't get the tone of voice or even the body language in those cases. So we want to be careful about that. And then I also fully agree that any of your strengths can create power for you as a leader. A member of my family just took the Strengths Finders recently, and one of her top 5 is humor. Oh my goodness, can you see how humor could be such a benefit as a leader? Ways to use humor to lighten the mood, to keep people happy and wanting to participate in work. Any of these personality traits can be used for leadership, and I love that. And then last but not least, let's keep in mind that mic drop moment where Brianne said, really, one sign of a great leader is that the people you're leading feel comfortable giving their opinion. And yes, that might create conflict, but what an empowering thing for people to feel comfortable giving their opinion, whether it's you to your leader or whether it's your team, group, people to you. I love it. Have a great one. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, leave a review, or take a screenshot and share on your social media. Let's get this message out further into the world. Now it's time to head down to the show notes to see the resources I mentioned. We may not have learned this before, but it sure is powerful now.